Chapter 121. Fight ends. Mamba shot his ki blast directly at Broly's face, exploding immediately on impact. Broly was pushed back slightly. Broly's ki started rising as he pushed against the gravitational pull. Without waiting any longer, Mao sent lightning at Broly's direction. A storm of attacks pushed him back until his body was ripped into pieces from his toes upwards. With a deafening scream, his body disappeared in the black hole. Ha 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 ha, that's what you get with messing with me. Mamba shouted at the black hole. There is something wrong, Crake said out with doubt in his voice. Crake, what do you mea dash? Did you really think that was going to work? A deep voice suddenly boomed behind them. The three froze for a second. The voice sent shivers down their spine. They felt like Death himself was speaking to them, while his scythe hovered behind their heads. Crake was the first to recover as he turned around. His dark yellow eyes opened wide as he looked at the monster behind them. Broly looked at them amusedly. I have to say it was not a bad idea to create illusions and lure me into a black hole, but I have to disappoint you. My vision is not something you can deceive. This is impossible. I saw how you were pulled into the black hole. Crake was agitated and backed away a little. Broly grinned. You aren't the only one that can pull off an illusion, and after seeing how you used it so blatantly, I couldn't help but mess with you. Hee hee hee. Crake raised his tentacles, and his whole body slightly glowed blue. The space around Broly started solidifying, trying to restrict his movements. Broly couldn't help but snort. You are just another bug I am going to squish now. Broly waved his arm, tearing apart the space imprisonment. Crake seemed to experience a backlash as his body bent forwards, as if he was going to puke any moment. Ha-yeah! A desperate scream came out of Mamba as he dashed at Broly, immediately slashing out. He swung his arm and looked madly at Broly, who only mockingly stared at him. Mamba's expression froze as a sharp pain came from his arm. He looked at his arm and saw nothing. His complete arm till the shoulder was gone. How dash! Before he could say anything, pain filled his stomach. He slowly looked down. His face became hideous as he saw his own arm penetrating his stomach. Broly's arm let go of Mamba's arm. Mamba followed Broly's arm and looked at Broly's face only to see bright yellow eyes staring back. Cough. Cough. I won't dash. Mamba coughed out blood. His pale expression was distorted in pain as he felt his own innards corroding. He pulled out his own arm. With a giant hole in his stomach, he retreated quickly. He was deathly pale, but it didn't seem like he was giving up. The others had a frightened expression on their faces as well. Crake was already backing away by a lot. He seemed like he would ditch as soon as an opportunity presented itself. Playtime is over, Broly calmly said before disappearing from their sight. Crake, watch out. Mao screamed as he turned towards the octopus, but his warning came too late. Broly grabbed two tentacles on both sides and pulled hard, directly ripping them off. Blue blood started spewing out of his stumps, but before he could retaliate, Broly kicked him away. Mao knew that he had to give his all if he wanted to survive and kill this monster. Black lightning suddenly lashed out of his body as the lightnings became thicker and seemingly more solid. He waved his arms and whip of lightning slashed at Broly, who only raised his arms. The whip wrapped around his arm. Mao tried to pull the whip, but it wouldn't move at all. Attack him now. We have T-dash. His mouth automatically stopped after he saw how a grin formed on Broly's face. Just as he was about to release his whip, Broly pulled hard. Mao shot through space straight at Broly. In an instant, Mao arrived and was directly sent flying again. The whip couldn't hold Mao's back as it snapped under the pressure. Broly looked at his arm and saw light burning marks, which quickly healed under his manipulation of life force. Broly disappeared from sight for a moment before reappearing, effectively evading the beams of lights coming from behind. He looked back at the miserable figure of Mamba, who was breathing heavily. Broly didn't bother with him as he saw that Mao's fled. He teleported in front of him and punched him towards Mamba, who evaded Mao's body before giving him a harsh look. The trio instantly understood after feeling how he used space to teleport. If they didn't stick together, not only wouldn't they escape, but their chances of survival would drastically shrink. Although their chance of survival at this point was minuscule, it was higher than if they tried to escape and have him kill them off one by one. Without thinking further, Crake waved his numerous tentacles, who released a storm of blue blades made out of magic and mental energy. These blades would attack Broly's body and his soul at the same time. Broly silently released a green sphere around him, blocking every blade coming at him. Crake didn't stop as he relentlessly shot out these blades. Mao and Mamba weren't inactive. They released waves of attacks at the same time. They surrounded him as they bombarded Broly with attacks, completely drowning Broly under their attacks. Explosion after explosion filled the area between the three. This went on for minutes until they stopped. Their body trembled heavily after the high energy expenditure. They tried to recover as much power as they could. They knew that their attacks wouldn't be able to kill him. Bwahaha. Insects, the lot of you. Broly's voice rang out, and with it a green light tore through the explosions, dispersing them in an instant. Broly's body was completely enveloped with his flame-like ki. Their minds were already on the verge of breaking as they didn't expect Broly to completely unharmed. After their failed trap, Broly reappeared with yellow eyes. His power was now far too much for the three to handle. Was that your best? They were already despairing. In a last attempt, they all raised their arms and channeled their energy to shoot out their strongest attacks. Mao's arms fused with each, and all the lightning in his body headed towards his arm. Craig's whole body was enveloped with blue energy and became brighter with every moment until he shined brightly and space around him warped. Mamba opened his mouth frighteningly wide, while his fangs started glowing green. His fangs connected with green energy threads in front of his mouth, forming a green blinking horn. Lightning cannon. Space cut. Basilisk horn. 3 dazzling attacks that filled the empty space with bountiful and destructive energy headed straight at Broly. The target of these planet-shattering attacks squinted slightly. A black lightning beam, a blade that separated space, and a green shining horn shot at Broly. Broly's grin had already disappeared and became solemn, facing the attacks. An instant later his body shrunk, and his hair stood on ends. Lightning covered his body as he outstretched his arms. Ha! A solid green sphere surrounded his body and blocked the attacks at the last moment. The attacks pressed against the sphere from all sides. The sphere protecting Broly not only didn't cave in but slowly pushed the attacks away. Slowly the energy and destructiveness in the attacks of the 3 emperors was slowly lost and faded away. The sphere was still expanding until the resistance became nil. No cracks or even scratches could be found on its surface. The sphere faded and revealed Broly, who was frowning slightly as he looked at the completely exhausted trio. I guess I have nothing more to see. Broly raised his arms slowly with his palms up. Spears of green lightning appeared all around him. Hundreds of spears pointed at the exhausted 3. They stared at the spears in front of them and became deathly pale. There was no escaping this. Chapter 122. Next challenge. Haha. Oh man, when will he collapse? We are almost fighting a whole hour already, Taro complained as he looked at the bull in the middle. Taro's arm was bloody, and blood was dripping out at the corner of his mouth. Zangya wasn't in any better shape. Her leg was bloody and was slightly twisted at a weird angle. Aaliyah and Kana were holding on much better. Except for numerous cuts and bruises, they didn't seem to have sustained any heavy injuries. Hopefully soon. Our healing capsules are running out. Zangya answered as she threw one capsule inside her mouth. She adjusted her leg back to its normal position, and the wound started closing shortly after. Taro popped in a capsule as well. Although they were talking and recovering, they didn't take their focus off Angus. Angus saw how the two leisurely healed again like many times before. Just as he was about to attack them, he was blocked by Kana. He was coming nearer to his limits. Even with his monstrous defense and endurance, he wouldn't be able to out-endure his enemies, especially if they healed after getting serious injuries. Although his situation looked hopeless, he knew as soon as the others came back, they would slaughter these annoying bastards. Angus was covered in blood. There wasn't any area that wasn't covered in scratches, but this was all they were, scratches. The wounds had accumulated, making him fatigue, but no wound was life-threatening. He mostly defended against his enemies as they were too fast to catch, but that didn't mean he was okay watching them heal. He had already attacked them countless times, and many times did it seem like the weaker two would be dying soon until he was intercepted by Aaliyah and Kana. Now it was the same, but this time he reacted to their blocking and struck right behind him. They would usually distract him with one in the front, but this time he was determined to not let this chance go. He struck behind him and felt his hit connect. Without hesitation he turned around and quickly grabbed Aaliyah, who was still dazed from the attack. "New." Angus smiled maliciously as he ignored the desperate scream from behind. He would sustain a larger wound if he didn't focus on his defense, but he needed to kill one. At least then the burden in this fight would lessen by a lot. It would make his weight endurable. He didn't say anything unnecessary and started crushing Aaliyah in his hand. He felt her resistance, but in front of his strength, he was able to crush her in seconds. He felt the bones break under his squeeze as he enjoyed the agonizing screams. Aaliyah started puking out blood as her resistance lessened. Angus' eyes were glinting with satisfaction. Suddenly a yellow flash passed in front of his eyes. It only took an instant, but as soon as it passed, his arms were assaulted with intense pain. In the next moment his vision was filled with blood as it spewed out of arms. He raised his arms and saw how cleanly cut off they were. His hands were still wrapped around the now unconscious Aaliyah. Blood was gushing out of his arms' stumps. He suddenly heard a weird sound he had ignored a moment ago, approaching him fast. Angus turned his head and saw how a key disc directly headed at him. He had no time to dodge, so he desperately increased his energy output in hope to block the attack that had cost him his 2 arms. But his reaction was too slow. The disc instantly appeared at his neck and cleanly cut through. Impose. Without finishing, Angus' head separated from his body, drifting in the empty space. Kana didn't bother with the body as she quickly flew towards Aaliyah. Kana immediately threw a healing capsule inside Aaliyah's mouth, forcing her to swallow it. A couple of moments later, Aaliyah's eyes trembled and slowly opened. She still looked deathly pale and exhausted. Kana then teleported her towards the spaceship to rest. Zangya wanted to follow, but saw how Taro turned the body into dust before collecting Angus' head. What are doing with this? Zangya said, frowning as she pointed at the head. HM? Oh, Broly once said that he couldn't wait to collect Mamba's head. Maybe he wants this head as well. I don't think he didn't mean it literally. It was just a dash. You know what? That's so considerate of you. He will like it. Zangya said sarcastically as she threw her arms up. She was about to teleport before seeing someone materialize in front of them. Broly stood tall. He looked at them with a satisfied smile on his face. Oh, you done already? The others are already in ship, huh? Yeah. Aaliyah was injured pretty badly while we ambushed this dumb bull. Is she okay? Yeah. She already took in a healing capsule and only needs rest. That's good then. By the way, what is in that bag? Zangya asked as she looked at the bag hung over Broly's shoulder. You mean this? These are their heads. Broly said as he opened the bag and showed the contents of the bag to Zangya like a trophy he just won. Broly, I got that bull's head as well. I think you want it as well, Taro exclaimed as he threw the head to Broly, who caught it and put it in his bag. Nice, thanks. Unbelievable. That's so messed up. Zangya shook her head before disappearing. Broly and Taro looked at each other before shrugging and disappeared as well. Broly put his bag, he created with magic, inside a machine before checking up on Aaliyah, who looked extremely exhausted. Broly ordered the robotic maids on the ship to quickly prepare a feast for the five. After this fight, they were extremely tired but mostly hungry. The robots constantly came with new food as the Saiyans devoured the food as quickly as it came. Even Zangya seemed to unleash her inner Saiyan as she practically jumped at the food. Only after 2 hours of constantly eating until their bellies threatened to burst did they stop. Afterwards, they slept for a day until they returned to Exausia, where they were welcomed by another big feast for their victory. Although Broly didn't confirm that they won beforehand, the Saiyans were completely confident in their king. While Broly was taking the next days leisurely on Exausia with his wives, he had sent his soldiers to the Andromeda Galaxy, where they would take over the remaining forces of the now dead 4 emperors. Cooler, on the other hand, was pushed out the Andromeda Galaxy. Broly had sent Cooler to a faraway galaxy, where he would expand his empire. Many days passed. Broly had put on his battle suit and gathered with Taro and Ace in his training room. Taro was excited to finally go to Earth. Even Ace was looking forward to seeing Jine's youngest son. In the next moment, the 3 of them disappeared silently from Exausia, only to appear light years away on planet Earth. Broly knew that it was about time for the androids to attack and for Cell to come. That was also why he took these 2 with him. He first wanted to take Zangya with him as well, but she was close to another breakthrough, so he just let her train in peace. Taro and Ace were weaker than the girls and would certainly accept the little challenge which will welcome them on Earth. According to the strength the Z fighters had shown in the series, even Gohan as an ascended Super Saiyan would hardly able to take these 2 on, but that was also why he was excited to come back. He wanted to see how much in power they increased with the extra pressure from him. They also had Jine and Raditz who have already told them on how to reach the next level. Maybe the android will be destroyed before they could even be absorbed by Cell. Broly took in a deep breath after appearing high in the sky. I am back, he mumbled as he sensed a couple of strong signatures in the distance. Apparently the fight had already started. Without hesitation, he headed there in lightning speed. Chapter 123. Unexpected Challengers. That's right, my friend. Let me ask you, does a machine like yourself ever experience fear? Vegeta's body increasingly released ki that drew in the clouds until the energy burst out, destroying the near periphery. A crater was formed around Vegeta. He slowly stepped outside with his hair glowing in a golden hue. He slowly walked towards Android 19 while holding his monologue about how a low-class Saiyan had achieved something he couldn't. He talked about how he trained and his struggles to become a Super Saiyan. Android 19 and Drive Jero seemed to be surprised by this discovery. Broly listened to his speech while Ace and Taro were bored. They only asked themselves why Broly was so interested in the former prince, who was struggling to become a Super Saiyan. It was true that there were only 5 Super Saiyans on Exausia at the moment, but they had many good seeds, who would join their ranks sooner or later. After I have defeated Broly and his henchmen, I will be prince of all Saiyans once again. Vegeta shouted. Taro snorted disdainful as he heard this. Humph, what a joke. Not even in 1,000 years. Broly sighed, glanced at Taro. You shouldn't look down on him. He had reached the level of legends after all. Yeah, right, it may have been something impossible in the past, but now? I even doubt what he is saying. He probably went to Jine on how to turn and now he is making up a nonsensical story. No, he had reached this level on his own. Even if he knew that Jine would be willing to tell him on how to turn, he would be too stubborn and prideful to ask. Then he is stupid, not knowing when to grasp opportunities. It's not like Jine would humiliate him. Yes, he may become stronger when he asks for guidance, but his very pride is his source of strength. He will reach great heights in the future. Taro frowned as he looked at Broly. He really didn't understand why he defended him. Broly didn't even put Aaliyah, the strongest Saiyan besides Broly, into his eyes. Now the former prince, someone who had barely reached Super Saiyan, had caught his attention. Whatever. Taro crossed his arms as he looked down at the fight between Vegeta and Android 19. It didn't take long until Vegeta completely obliterated his opponent. Broly knew what Taro was thinking, but how would Taro know that these were his childhood heroes? What height they would reach in the future? He didn't bother with him anymore and continued observing the scene. The destruction of Android 19 resulted in Drive Jero fleeing from the group, but Vegeta didn't follow up immediately. He first ordered Krillin to give him a Senzu Bean. HM? That is. Ace suddenly caught onto the Senzu Bean as it immediately recharged the exhausted Vegeta. A Senzu Bean, like our healing capsules, only a bit more instantaneously. Ace rubbed his chin as he heard this. He pondered for a moment before opening his mouth to speak again. Should we dash? Don't bother with it. The yield of these beans is far too low to become useful to our empire. Stick to the healing capsules. Broly interrupted, guessing A's thoughts. Alright, let's follow them, and keep check to not release your energy. Since they got here, the Z fighters weren't able to locate them. That was because they already had trained their control of ki to not leak out when performing actions that didn't require high expenditure. Broly, on the other hand, had difficulties in doing the same as his ki was harder to control than theirs. Instead, he used magic to fly. He was able to reach far greater speed than the other two, even if it was wasteful, considering the amount he needed to reach this speed. Just as Broly was about to head off after them, he noticed someone heading towards their direction at an incredible fast rate. Broly turned his head and looked into the far distance and saw how Kakarot was heading towards them. Goku's eyes locked with Broly's. Goku was surprised for a second before it was replaced by a solemn expression as he increased his speed. I guess we get some company. Ace and Taro looked at the fast-approaching key signature. This is Kakarot?
Ginesson.
Yes, indeed. Broly's corners of his lips curved upwards as he looked at the imposing aura Kakarot was giving off. Shouldn't he be miserable right now, suffering from the heart virus and all? Even if he didn't, why is he only coming now? Perhaps he already suffered from it and is already cured now? It didn't take long for Kakarot to arrive. He silently stared at the three, before his eyes wandered over the destruction on the ground and then into the distance where the Z fighters disappeared to. This surprised Broly as they suppressed their ki. He himself would only be able to sense them by their life force. Hey Kakarot, long time no see. Good to see you healthy, Broly said to him with a grin on his face. His concern didn't come off as sincere at all. Suddenly, two figures approached from the same direction Kakarot came. They quickly arrived and hovered slightly behind Kakarot as they looked at Broly's small group. These two were Raditz and Jine. Ah, I see. A family trip. A picnic, maybe? Kakarot frowned, listening to Broly's mocking tone. My name is Goku for you, and I believe you are a few years too early, Goku said while putting all his attention on Broly. He didn't even bother with the other two as he knew the greatest threat now is Broly himself. Hee. Don't worry, I keep my words. I am only sightseeing, showing my subordinates this beautiful planet. After all, it won't exist for long, now will it? Goku was only gritting his teeth, which surprised Broly as he assumed that he would rush head first in. Seems like with his mother around, he matured. In an instant, a leg fiercely kicked against the side of Broly's head. He was pushed to the side for a few meters before he rebalanced himself. Never mind. Broly looked at Goku, who had instantly transformed into a Super Saiyan, and attacked him. Broly's group saw the apologetic expression on Raditz and Jine before they took on a solemn one as well and headed out, rushing at Ace and Taro. Broly was pleasantly surprised as he saw Jine and Raditz turn Super Saiyan. He had to grin as he looked at Raditz, who looked like he turned Super Saiyan 3. Of course, the only thing different were his eyebrows. Ace and Taro transformed as well and engaged Raditz and Jine, easily pushing them back. Although the other two had attained Super Saiyan, they were of course no match for Ace and Taro, who were able to turn for years already. Goku quickly rushed at Broly and released dozens of attacks in a second. He pushed Broly back and struck him to the ground with both his hands intertwined. Broly didn't crash into the ground but used his arms to somersault before landing on his feet. I have to give it to him. Even with all this strength, the planet would hardly be affected by this fight. Goku didn't give him any rest and pursued him. Broly blocked and dodged all the attacks calmly. Although he was grazed from time to time and was obviously in a disadvantage, he didn't want to turn Akari, not yet at least. Seeing how undisturbed Broly was, Goku suddenly burst out with power, directly sent a powerful punch straight at Broly's face. Broly's eyes constricted as he saw this, but in his base form he was too slow to react and could only endure the attack. The punch squarely landed on his cheek, sending him flying into a rock formation. Broly's body went right through the rocks, leaving a trail of destruction behind him. Goku was heavily panting after delivering the punch, before calming his breath shortly after. A few seconds later, his eyes focused on the figure that walked out of dust cloud. Goku saw how Broly licked the blood coming out the corner of his mouth. "Yuck!" Goku exclaimed. In the next moment, his eyes widened as he looked directly into Broly's yellow eyes just a few centimeters away, before feeling the brunt force impacting his stomach. His view turned as he was sent across the floor. He bounced for several kilometers before ramming into a giant boulder. He was deeply embedded into the stone. His body arched, but he knew that he had to be vigilante for any attacks that might come soon. Just as he was about to crawl out again, at the end of the hole, he saw Broly eyeing him with a ferocious smile on his face. Goku felt a shiver down his spine as he felt the immense power exuding out of Broly, but instead of feeling fear, he became more excited. Chapter 124, Partially Ascended. Without hesitation, Goku jumped at Broly, who watched him with curiosity. Goku seemed to punch out, but before it connected, he opened his palm, revealing a small key sphere. It exploded in Broly's face. The boulder couldn't handle the explosion and quickly crumbled. Goku quickly retreated and threw more key blasts at the figure that was walking through the dust cloud. But no matter how many blasts Goku fired, Broly didn't seem to be disturbed as he just walks through it. He didn't even bother to defend as he just took the attacks head-on. Seeing these small attacks not work, Goku steadied his stance and stretched out his arms to the front, and then pulled them to his sides as he charged up his attack. Kamehame. Broly had walked out and stood right in front of Goku waiting for his attack. He smiled haughty as if the attack wouldn't do as much as a scratch to him. Ha! Goku directly shot out his Kamehameha wave in Broly's face at point blank. Everything behind Broly was obliterated as he just stood there like he was enjoying the breeze. A second later, the attack ended in a huge explosion. The dust didn't even settle before an arm shot out of the dust cloud and grabbed Goku by the hair and lifted him up. Goku was striking Broly's arm with his elbow, hoping to get out of his grasp, but to no avail. The dust finally settled with Broly smiling at him. What was that supposed to be, Goku? Without warning, Broly struck out with his free hand, sending Goku flying parallel to the ground. Before Goku could get out of his daze from the hit, Broly appeared behind him in his flight path. Without giving Goku a chance to retaliate, Broly fiercely kicked him into the air. He felt some bones crack under his kick, but Broly didn't want to give him time to recover. He pursued him. A moment later, Broly caught up, surpassed Goku, and with a chop, sent him to the ground. Like a meteor, he shot to the ground, but instead of a huge impact, Goku managed to deviate his flying path, making him slide across the ground. It didn't take long for him to rebalance and disappear into a rock formation. Broly didn't bother follow him and started to fire a few key blasts, blowing the hole surrounding up until he saw a figure flying out of one of the explosions. He hovered in the air before realizing that Goku threw in a healing capsule. Yes, not a Senzu bean. Using my healing capsules right in front of me? You have some guts. Broly quickly flew straight towards Goku, who finally stopped and headed back, meeting Broly mid-flight. Broly punched out and Goku evaded it barely, delivering a kick to Broly's stomach. But before Goku could follow up, Broly retracted his arm, restraining the leg. Broly squeezed, intending to break it, but Goku suddenly burst out with power again for just a moment, heavily kicking Broly's arm, but it didn't move. Goku's countenance changed. In the next moment, with a snap, Goku's leg broke. Only then let Broly let go of him. Goku fell to the ground. He quickly stood up but stumbled back, trying to avoid putting weight on his broken leg. His face grimaced in pain. Hee. So, I didn't imagine things. That burst of power is not something a normal Super Saiyan can achieve. Go ahead. You will need all the healing you can get. Broly opened his palm, symbolizing Goku to heal himself. Goku hesitated for a second before he threw in a healing capsule. His face changed to a normal solemn one, devoid of pain. Ready for round 2? Broly's eyes changed back to his base as he outstretched his arms to the side as if he was going for a hug. Goku frowned deeply as he saw that. Broly knew what Goku was thinking. At least now you have a chance. Broly teased him, and as expected, Goku closed the distance in an instant. With a burst of power, his legs swept out like whip, tearing through air. Broly was barely able to block the attack. He slid across the ground as he was sent backwards. His legs pierced the ground, creating 2 deep trenches along the way. Broly lowered his arms to take a look and saw Goku just in front of him, punching out. Broly tilted his head, avoiding the punch. Of course, Goku didn't give him any rest as he relentlessly attacked. Only in the last moments would his power suddenly accelerate. This increased the pressure on Broly as he was pushed backwards, but unlike the beginning, he was barely grazed, let alone hit. Every few seconds would Goku pop in another healing capsule, quickly restoring his lost energy, before engaging Broly again with all he got. But unlike before, Goku was unable to catch Broly off guard. They exchanged countless bouts. Broly got bored as he knew that Goku didn't have anything more to offer as of right now. He tilted his head, avoiding a punch before headbutting Goku squarely on his nose. Goku's nose immediately broke and his head flung backwards. Broly's solemn face gave off a dangerous vibe as he positioned him slightly sideways as he closed in. His right arm suddenly became a blur. An instant later, he had already retracted his arm while Goku's eyes rolled into the back of his head as he fainted. Numerous fist marks covered Goku's body. The fist marks faintly released smoke as if his skin was burning. It took a few seconds before Goku's stiff body finally fell on the ground. Broly looked at the unconscious body of Goku. It took Elias 7 years to ascend the Super Saiyan transformation, but you are already tapping into it after 3. If it had been a year later, you would have already accumulated enough energy to fully ascend. That was why you only boosted part of your body. This is really ingenious and possible usable with Divine Ki later on. You don't mind if I steal this idea, right? I guess I will take your silence as your acknowledgement. Broly turned around and flew off. He looked at his fist before grinning. I made some progress with Kaka's fighting style. It is marvelous indeed. I was able to use every bit of energy with extreme precision in these last attacks. He looked around and saw the destruction he had caused to the surroundings. He shook his head. The destruction he caused was only because his attacks wasn't as controlled. If he was able to master Keiko's fighting style, there would be only fist-sized holes instead of those kilometers-wide craters. Without bothering with it any longer, he disappeared into the direction of Jine and Raditz. They were going at it seemingly fiercely, but Broly could tell that it was more of a spar than a real fight. As soon as they saw his figure, they stopped. Broly told Jine and Raditz where to find Goku before he headed towards Dr. Gero's hideout with Taro and Aiz in tow. And, how is he? Taro asked as they were flying towards the life force Broly had sensed. Not bad. He even caught me off guard, but his power itself leaves a lot to be desired. Nevertheless, he will be an ascended Super Saiyan soon. Taro and Aiz were surprised. They knew it wasn't something easy to reach that form. They themselves took over a decade to reach it. That is fast. Indeed, but it will take him years to reach your power. You should still raise your training up a notch if you want to compete with him in the future, Broly said, trying to rile them up, but only Taro seemed somewhat affected. Aiz still had his neutral expression. Taro suddenly spotted something on his Broly's neck, a thin string leading down to the front under his armor. It seemed to have come out when he was fighting. Taro quickly dismissed it and just continued flying. Meanwhile, a group had gathered at a mountainside with a road along it. In a crater further down were 2 figures swirling around each other. One of them was forced to the ground. Vegeta stood back up and rushed at Android 18, trying to kick her away, but she merely jumped over his attack and dazed him with a kick on her own. As Vegeta stumbled a few steps, she headed back in, delivering a heavy kick to his side with his arm in between. She didn't follow up as Vegeta was stumbling and kneeled to the ground. He shouted out in pain as his arm was hanging limp on his side. It was clear that his arm broke by the attack. Chapter 125. Androids vs. Broly. Broly and the others were quickly approaching the mountainside from where several key signatures came. Apparently, the Z-Fighters were already fiercely fighting the androids. According to the series, the Z-Fighters would be stomped into the ground by them, but Broly of course hoped that they would have increased in strength like Goku did. It didn't take them long until they finally arrived, and now Broly could now accurately tell how much they have improved. Piccolo was actually a tad bit stronger than Vegeta, but of course it wasn't enough to beat the androids. The others improved a lot as well, but Broly didn't think that they deviated much from what he saw in the series. They were quickly beaten up. Surprisingly, Krillin wasn't there, but Gohan was left standing. A beautiful, slender, curvy woman with a fair complexion was approaching him. This, of course, was number 18. Gohan didn't wait as his ki suddenly increased tremendously. His hair started rising, and Broly thought for a second that Gohan had already become a Super Saiyan. Unfortunately, his power peaked just as he was about to transform. With a stomp on the ground, he shot towards number 18, who only smiled at the attempt. She evaded the attack and smacked Gohan into the mountainside. He instantly fainted, and with him the last fighter of their group had lost to the androids. Broly knew that they were about to leave, but he didn't have any of it. He was here to play with them. His group quickly descended to the ground and appeared in front of number 18. The androids were surprised at the sudden appearance. Number 17 was frowning as he looked at Broly's imposing figure. Broly only provokingly smiled at them. "And who are you, big guy?" Number 18 asked as she observed the one in front of her. Number 16 was going through his database and informed them about Broly as he found an entry from when he first met the Z-Fighters. Since the bugs Dr. Gero used to gather DNA and data from exceptional fighters were automated, Dr. Gero himself didn't know about Broly, but number 16 of course had access to that database. He knew from the taken footage of Broly's little bout with the others that Broly and his followers were exceptional strong. Number 16 reminded the other androids to be careful. Number 17 and number 18 were shocked by the revelation, but after the initial surprise their expression returned to a haughty one. So, what if he is stronger than them? Didn't we just beat them up too? Number 17 spoke, and without any warning, charged out. Number 17 punched out. Broly evaded the attack and thrusted his arm directly at number 17's throat. Just as his fingertips were about to touch his throat, they stopped. With only a centimeter left, Broly's fingertips stopped. Number 17 looked at the hand and immediately jumped back. He touched his throat, seemingly to feel if he was hurt. Cold sweat covered his back as he thought about the fact that he was almost fatally injured in a single exchange. He instantly knew that Broly was a leagues above the Z-fighters, and that he had to take him seriously. Number 17 didn't back down, instead rushed back to Broly. He released dozens of attacks in a second, but no matter how much effort and strength he put behind his attacks, he couldn't connect. He gritted his teeth as he saw how calmly blocked and evaded his attacks. Broly obviously didn't take him seriously. Number 18 was shocked to see how her brother wasn't able to gain advantage. Without saying anything, she rushed in to help. Number 17 first wanted to stop her, but he knew that there was no way for him alone to beat Broly. Number 18 joined her brother and relentlessly threw out attacks after the other. Chops, kicks, sweeps, elbow attacks. No matter what attack or in which position Broly was in, he blocked or evaded them all. Although it looked like he was being pushed back, Broly could easily stomp them into the ground if he wanted. They wouldn't even be a match for the now unconscious Goku. How would they even hope to beat him? Even together, they would be far from a match against him. Broly leaned sideward, evading a punch from number 17. With a kick upwards, he sent number 17 flying. Number 18 was trying to kick his head while he was busy with number 17, but suddenly his speed increased as he ducked under her leg. Broly reached out and grabbed her leg. He spun around once and threw her at her brother, who was finally able to stop. He was still dazed from Broly's attack and was unable to dodge his sister. She crashed into him, and they both fell from the sky. They heavily landed on the ground. Broly didn't follow up and instead waited for them to recover. They slowly stood up and watched Broly vigilantly. Number 17 suddenly shouted at number 16, who was observing them. "What are you doing? Help us." Number 17 was ranting while number 16 was still looking at Broly, who had crossed his arms and smiled. "My only objection is to kill Goku. If you interfere with my mission, I will annihilate you." Number 16 spoke without emotions. Broly almost burst out laughing. "Oi, threatening me? That's some confident words. Can you back them up?" Broly's smile slowly disappeared as he was speaking. Without speaking anything further, he disappeared and directly re-emerged in front of number 16. Broly punched out. Number 16 quickly covered his head as he crossed his arms in front of him, but instead of a punch, number 16 registered both his wrists being grabbed. His block was forced open, revealing Broly's fierce glance. In the next moment, a knee came flying right in his face. He was unable to react this quickly. His head swung backwards as he took the attack head-on. With another kick, Broly sent number 16 flying. Number 16's heavy body bounced several times on the ground before stopping. He laid on the ground, not moving for some time. He slowly got back up and saw how number 17 and number 18 were knocked unconscious by simple chop to their neck. Number 16 looked at Broly, who waved at him slightly before he and his followers disappeared into the sky. Number 16 didn't follow him as he knew from that simple exchange that he would be easily disposed of by Broly. He knew that Broly was hiding strength based on the exchange with number 18 and number 17. But this was beyond what he calculated. Number 16 walked up to the two unconscious androids and picked them up before disappearing as well. He had a mission to accomplish, and these two would still prove useful in future exchanges. Chapter 126, Contact with Cell. "So, what now? Are we going back again?" Taro asked Broly as they flew away. "No, I still need to gather some things, and besides we still have to give our present to someone, who will appear today as well." "Yeah, right. I first thought you wanted to give it to Goku or Vegeta." "So, it's not someone from their group?" Taro questioned. "Yes, don't think about it. You will meet him soon. If I am not wrong, we can feel his ki in just a few hours. Until then I wanted to get a present for our scientists." The trio quickly flew into a city, not bothering at all with all the attention they got by flying midday over the busy traffic. They quickly headed towards a building Broly had visited a few years ago. They just walked into the building with the words Capsule Corporation on it. This big house seemed pretty empty. With the exception of an old man and a seemingly young woman, the house was only filled with animals. Broly quickly went into their storage room until he found a box with capsules inside. They just ignored the questions they got from Dr. Brief, since he didn't make any attempt to stop them. His wife, Panchi, who seemed flustered by the sudden guests, wanted to quickly prepare some cake and tea for them. Before she was done, they had already disappeared and headed to God's temple. Its location was slightly hidden by magic, but for Broly, it was too easy to find it. They quickly arrived at Corinne's tower and flew upwards along it. After a short moment, they landed on the lookout. Broly for the first time looked at the familiar side of the lookout. It didn't take long before two people came outside the temple to greet them. Of course, these two were Kami and Popo. Kami was gripping his staff tightly as he looked at the unexpected visit. He of course knew of Broly, who had easily beaten up Goku. The other Z-fighters had noticed the fluctuation from their fight as well, but as they had some androids to take care of, they didn't bother with it. What do you want, Broly? Kami raised his voice hostilely. Calm down, buddy. Just want to enjoy the show. I heard you had a problem with androids, and I thought I'd check it out, Broly said in a friendly tone, but this only made Kami more apprehensive. Not long ago he had heard from King Kai of Broly's actions in the Andromeda Galaxy, and he knew that it was still not time to confront Broly. What made him relieved was the fact that Broly seemingly wants to uphold his promise about only coming to take action in 7 years from now. If there was enough time, Kami was confident that the Z-fighters, especially Goku, would be able to defeat Broly. What he couldn't understand was the fact that Broly wanted to witness their fights. In Broly's eyes, it should only be a quarrel of kids, right? After all, his strength was more than enough to crush them beneath his feet. He doubted that Broly would want information about their strength. He knew that Saiyans were extremely arrogant. He wouldn't consider studying their capabilities, right? The trio ignored the two and walked past them inside the temple. They quickly arrived at their food storage as if they were able to smell it the whole time. They weren't polite as they just stole the raw food and prepared their dinner. While Broly and his friends were enjoying their food, the Z-fighters slowly woke up. Because there wasn't Krillin present to feed them a Senzu bean, it actually took them a while before one of them could move again and feed the others with a Senzu bean. Vegeta had quickly flown off after waking up, while Piccolo came to a decision and quickly headed towards Kami's lookout. It wasn't long until he had reached the lookout. He didn't need to wait as Kami was already prepared. He knew why Piccolo had come here. Piccolo wanted to fuse with him and bring back the past Super Namekian. He would have hesitated and found some reasons not to fuse, but after seeing how casually Broly came in, beaten up not only Goku but the androids as well, he knew that only by fusing, their chances of success would rise. Piccolo was surprised that Kami didn't argue but almost urged him. Piccolo made it clear that they had to use his body as the base, and Kami without hesitation gave his acknowledgement. Piccolo put his palm on Kami's chest, who then started screaming as his ki and life force flared up. With a bright light, Kami disappeared as he fused with Piccolo. The light that came out of Piccolo's body had disappeared as fast as it appeared. Piccolo slowly stood up and felt his body before turning his head to the temple's entrance. Broly stood there with a roasted meat drumstick. Broly observed Piccolo with a smile. He casually bit a piece of meat off before turning around, walking inside the temple again. Piccolo gulped. He could feel how his strength had risen exponentially, but he couldn't help but seriously doubt that he would be a match against Broly. In fact, after he became stronger, he was more aware of the gap that existed between the two. He didn't bother with it anymore and walked to the edge. He turned around and waved goodbye at the crying Popo before jumping off the edge. With a flash, his ki enveloped him and he headed off. But his goal was not the androids but something else. While Broly was there, Kami had looked down at the earth, looking at the actions of the androids. But in the end, something else had taken his notice. Something had killed many humans in a slightly bigger city. Since Kami had now fused with Piccolo, he knew of this creature that had put Kami at unease for the last 4 years. Kami had speculated that this being should be more powerful than even the androids. While Piccolo headed towards this being, Broly and his crew finally walked out of the temple. Thanks for the meal, Broly said to Popo, stunning him for a second, before the trio disappeared as they teleported away. Kilometers away, they appeared in a giant city, which echoed with agonizing screams. Broly looked around indifferently before he focused at one direction, seemingly seeing through walls. Broly smiled before he dashed into that direction. He didn't bother to jump or go around the houses, but just ran through them as if the buildings didn't exist at all. The source of the screams came closer and finally stopped. Cell had now finished his last meal in this city and wanted to head off to another city, but he felt a presence quickly approach him. He suppressed his ki before hiding in the shadows of the debris of a skyscraper. He noticed that the wall he was leaning against was shaking and quickly realized what was happening. He tried to move away from the wall, but it was already too late. The wall burst into thousands of pieces as a large guy charged through it, while shouting, "Here's Broly." With a ferocious smile, Broly grabbed the shocked Cell by the head. Without giving Cell time to react, Broly forced his head into the ground with the momentum he had gathered. A deep trench was formed with Cell's face. Just after they stopped sliding across the ground, Broly gave him another kick, sending him through multiple buildings. After a short while of recovering, Cell jumped out of the debris as he knew that Broly seemed to know his position, even if he suppressed his ki. Cell looked at Broly's figure, who looked at him leisurely. Cell considered his options to either stand his ground and attack him or flee until he had absorbed the androids. He knew that right now, he wouldn't necessarily be a match for the person in front of him. He didn't want to die after finally coming to the past. waiting for 4 years only to be killed just as he was about to get stronger and become a perfect being. But his option of fleeing was quickly denied as another 2 appeared around him. He only now noticed that they had tails and immediately recognized them as Saiyans. He was confused as there shouldn't be any other Saiyans except for Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, and Trunks. He hesitated for a moment before landing. From what he knew about Saiyans, he may be able to trick them using their huge egos. Before he could say anything, one of the Saiyans threw something at him. He caught it easily but was still looking warily at the Saiyans around him. They didn't seem to make a move anytime soon but instead waited for him. He couldn't help but look at what he had caught. His eyes widened as he sensed the immense energy inside the strange fruit he had just caught. Chapter 127. Improve or Die. He looked suspiciously at the 3 Saiyans. Don't be a scaredy cat. We just want you to get stronger, otherwise it would be boring. Broly smiled, but Cell couldn't help but feel that he was hiding something. He comes out of nowhere and gave him this kind of treasure? It would be foolish of him not to suspect something, but he knew very well that he doesn't really have a choice. Now does he? Cell looked at the other 2 Saiyans. One didn't show any emotions and the other had his arms crossed, while tapping on one with his finger. It was clear that that one was impatient. Instead of making a fuss, he just bit the bullet, in this case the fruit. As soon as he bit into it, he felt immense energy flowing into him. They were nourishing his body and he could feel his strength instantly increase. These thousands of humans he just absorbed were nothing compared to this single fruit. He even felt that he had enough energy to attain the next step of his path to become a perfect being, but he had to be patient. He needed the androids to evolve to get the best results. Theoretically, with enough energy he could do it without them, but he had no prior information on the next evolution. If he made a mistake, his foundation would be flawed, but with the androids the process would almost be automatically. As he felt the energy, he had dropped his guard for a second. In just that instant, Broly seemed to have teleported right in front of him. Broly pointed his fingers at Cell's head before he could react. His mind went blank as something seemed to drill into his head. His body shook for a moment before Cell stabilized himself. He quickly recovered and slapped Broly's hand away as he jumped backwards. Broly only grinned but didn't follow up with anything. He then turned to Ace. Ace, have some fun with him. Ace didn't say anything unnecessary as he directly dashed to Cell, who was surprised by the sudden turn of events. Nevertheless, after Broly's attempt to attack him, he wouldn't be caught off guard again. He directly engaged Ace and overpowered him quickly until Ace turned Super Saiyan. Cell stood no chance against Ace now and was quickly dominated by him. He was being pushed through the whole city. He was like a baby in front of an adult. He stood no chance, but no matter what he wouldn't just bend his knee. Broly yawned as he looked at the fight. He already sensed Piccolo's ki swiftly approaching. After a round of pushing Cell around, Piccolo had finally arrived. Broly called Ace back and slowly rose into the sky. Piccolo frowned as he looked at the 3 Saiyans and the miserable figure, which gave off a familiar key signature. We have warmed him up for you. No reason to thank us, Piccolo. It was our pleasure. Broly said cheekily before heading off with his crew in tow. What now? Taro asked. He was beginning to feel bored. The fighters here weren't bad but still far from being his or A's match. We are going to keep Goku busy until Cell absorbed the androids. Oh, so that is that bug's name. Why do you want him to absorb the androids? Well, he needs the androids to evolve to his final form. His strength will increase significantly. He will not be as strong as you guys, but still nothing to scoff about. If he and the others can't even keep up with us, why did we even come along if there is no one for us to fight? Hee hee, they will be strong enough for you if you motivate them correctly, you will see. Whatever you say, you are the boss, but can't you just make Cell motivated? You already have him under your control, haven't you? Taro inquired. Broly glanced at him for a second, giving Taro a fright. He had already told them to not speak about it so causally if they aren't in a secure room. Broly created a key barrier around the 3, which obstructed the sound. The light of the barrier started to brighten, preventing someone from lip reading. If that motivation comes from their deepest desire, they become stronger exponentially. I could make him, but he would be inferior if that desire had come from himself. I only give him some pushes here and there, but I can't directly make him. That's a no-go. I already messed up with Cooler, can't make the same mistake now. Cell is too valuable. Cooler had improved considerably, but he was far from becoming Golden Cooler. It was possible that he just wasn't as talented as Frieza, but Broly could tell that he didn't give 100% in improving. Something was obstructing his progress. After Broly had experimented with some elves, he noticed the difference in their progress, if he commanded them to train or make it a necessity for them to train. He isn't that strong, even if he had his final form. If he is not even as strong as we are, as you say, why don't you just go to the top ranks of the universe and control them? Do you think it is easy to control a soul without them noticing? Even if I become vastly stronger than them, most of them have years of experience and many would have trained their mental energy, which directly connects with their soul. They would notice something different immediately, but Cell on the other hand is just a newcomer. He has yet to notice his soul, he wouldn't see anything wrong, even if his soul was in shambles. That is why I did it now. With his potential, he will soon be one of the strongest fighters in the universe. He is going to become one of the strongest? Don't let his look deceive you. His body contains the DNA from Frost Demons, Saiyans, and Namekians. His body is a collection of 3 races with immeasurable potential. Alright, so, we just need to help Cell absorb the androids. We don't have to help him, he will do it himself. He already ate a fruit of might, he will hunt down the androids now, but he isn't strong enough to defeat Goku. For now, we keep Goku from killing Cell until Cell reaches his final form. Understood. Alright. Aiz and Taro answered. In the next moment, Broly undid the barrier and sensed for Goku's ki. He squinted his eyes as he noticed that Goku had suppressed it. The others seemed to have vanished as well. Even Cell was gone. Broly thought that since Cell had enough energy, he would go out to hunt the androids now, but instead they all hid. Broly grinned that they thought that they could escape his senses. The next moment his vision changed, revealing all energy types to him. He sensed the most prominent life force and immediately recognized that they had gathered at the lookout. The 3 didn't attempt to hide their presence as they directly headed towards the lookout. Without obstruction, they arrived above the lookout. They looked down at the Z fighters who returned their gaze. Krillin was gulping and the others were uneasy as well. Broly couldn't find Vegeta or Trunks, which meant that they probably already went inside the hyperbolic time chamber. Goku, Raditz and Jine were there as well. Broly wondered why Goku was here, since he had more than enough power to kill not only the androids but the current Cell as well. Instead of wasting time here, shouldn't he be on the lookout for them? Well, better for him. Now he doesn't have to follow Goku around. Piccolo, on the other hand, wasn't here. Was he killed by Cell? Broly quickly dismissed that idea. They were currently on the same level. If he wasn't careless, he shouldn't have died against Cell. Broly slowly opened his mouth and started speaking. Listen up, you worms. I had given you 10 years and hope you will drastically improve, but you weaklings barely made any progress after 3 years. Since I am generous, I give you another 2 weeks. I will create an arena where you will fight against my followers. If you can beat one of them, I will only take action in 7 years as promised. If you fail, you can all die with this planet. Now send your elites to fight them. Until then, no one will leave this planet. Broly's voice echoed in the sky. He made sure to amplify his voice, so it would reach every creature on this planet. He wanted to make sure Cell had heard it too, no matter where he was. After delivering his message, he, Taro and Aiz seemingly headed off again. Unbeknownst to the Z fighters, they still hovered in the air without a care in the world. They were hovering and even brought out some food they had stolen from the temple, completely in plain sight, but no one seemed to notice them. Chapter 128. Preparation. Broly, Taro and Aiz were eating leisurely midair, while the Z fighters were tense and contemplating if they could win against Broly's followers. Goku was confident that they could win, which eased up the atmosphere, but the words from Jine quickly dampened the mood again. She told them that they have already ascended the Super Saiyan transformation for many years, and it would be difficult for them to win. What made them hope was the fact that Goku wasn't far from the second level. With the hyperbolic time chamber, their chances would be even better. Although the humans of the group didn't expect to make great changes, they still resolved themselves to train. Since they all only had 2 chances to go inside, they had enough time for everyone to train, if they divided themselves into groups. While they were eating, Ace suddenly spoke out. Broly, where are we going to build the arena? Oh yeah, wait for a second, I am going off and build one. Won't be long until I come back. Without waiting for a response, Broly headed off into the distance. Aiz and Taro looked at each other before grasping their food and then followed Broly. Broly noticed that and came to a stop before he turned around and questioned them. We don't know how to use magic to hide ourselves. If they look into the sky, we would be immediately exposed. Right. Never mind then, just follow me. The 2 followed Broly and directly flew to a remote wasteland, far away from the cities. While they were off to build an arena, a new figure appeared on the lookout. Piccolo had finally appeared on the lookout. He looked at the Z fighters before questioning them of Trunks' whereabouts. Goku came forwards and told him that they were inside the hyperbolic time chamber to train. I see. Then we will wait until Trunks comes out. Why do you want to see him? Krillin asked. There is another entity from the future named Cell, whose purpose for coming here is to absorb the androids 17 and 18. He needs them to evolve, and we are going to help him. Why do we help him? Is he a good guy? Krillin asked doubtfully.
No.
He is another creation from Dr. Gero. He is stronger and probably even more evil than the androids we have encountered. But we need every help to beat the followers from Broly. We will also have to convince the androids to help us. That seems plausible, but why do we need Trunks? Goku asked while scratching his head. Since our androids are stronger, we will go to the future and take the androids from Trunks' timeline back here for Cell to absorb. I already told Cell to wait on an island a few thousand kilometers away. I see. So, we gather the best we can, train in the hyperbolic time chamber and defeat Broly's followers. Afterwards, what are we going to do with Cell and the androids? Tien summarized while already pondering on what to do when they succeed. After all, the androids and Cell in their eyes are still evil. Don't worry, if they think about messing around, I am going to beat them up, Goku said while slapping on his upper arm. With Goku around, the atmosphere was considerably loosened up. In the meantime, on barren land far off from civilization, two figures were arguing with each other about what to do, while another tall guy with an orange mohawk was sitting on the ground. 17. We need to fight too. 18 was shouting at 17, who was leaning against a boulder. 18, that's not our problem. Let Goku and his crew fight that monster. 17 stubbornly rejected her. You know they don't stand a chance against him. He will destroy the whole planet, and I don't have to tell you what happens to us if we don't have a freaking planet to live on. 16, help me out. 16 was smiling at a bird on his hand, but as soon as 18 shouted towards him, it was scared away. My only mission is to kill Goku. See, how about we take a spaceship from somewhere and leave this PL dash? I suggest searching at his home. We have no other indications for his location. 16 finished his reply and stood up before continuing. I can't let someone else kill Goku. I knew I could count on you. 17, don't be stupid and help us. This is suicide. Why bother with this planet, Lu Dash? You think we can leave? You heard what he said. It will be his followers that fight in 2 weeks, not himself. If we try to leave, he will take actions himself. This is our best chance. 17 thought about how easily they were pummeled by Broly. He gritted his teeth before throwing his arms into the air. Fine. I am in. 18 smiled happily hearing this. We need to head to these coordinates 58N018, 439, East District. 16 told them about the Goku's address. All right, let's go. Without further ado, they flew to Goku's home. Broly and his crew had, after searching for a while, found a vast wasteland, perfect for them and the Z fighters to go all out. With a hand wave, the small hills and boulders were flattened. A huge perfect area was being created in an instant. He first thought about using a mountain like Cell did in the series, but he thought it would be better to use stronger materials to do this. He hadn't done it often as he mostly used magic to create clothes or to enhance his attacks. He closed his eyes and concentrated before a white block appeared in front of him, which he directly placed on the cleared area. Afterwards, he created more of these KD blocks and placed them to create a simple arena. KD was a durable steel that Exauja had once came across upon. It was not as durable as Kachin, but it certainly was better than most materials one could find in the universe. Exauja, after finding it, had used it to enhance the durability of its city. Broly used it, since it wouldn't cost him as much magic power as it would with Kachin. It didn't take long for the arena to finish, and was practically a rebuild of Cell's arena, only more durable. It would be hard to annihilate it, even if Vegeta used his final flash in his Super Saiyan 2nd grade. While giving the arena the final touch by giving it those spiky corners, he noticed 3 figures a few hundred kilometers away. Broly grinned as he recognized the androids. He suddenly disappeared from the spot. Taro and Ace looked up from their meals, only to see no one around. They shrugged before continuing to eat. Apparently Earth's food really did it to them. They had even asked Broly where they could find more. They were determined to go to a city to gather a lot and bring it back to Exauja. Broly seemingly materialized in front of the androids, completely frightening the 3. Hello there. Where are you 3 heading to? After hearing that, 16 stepped in front of the other 2. He was looking tense as he observed at the smiling Broly. We are heading to Goku's house to ally with them against you. 17 and 18 were shocked that 16 simply revealed their plan. 16, what are you dash? I see. The direct approach. Good choice. You won't find him at his home. They are currently at Kami's lookout, training in the hyperbolic time chamber. I have no data of that place. No problem. Broly pointed a finger at 16's head, and a beam of golden light directly pierced 16's head. 17 was about to take action before he was stopped by 16. Thank you, we will take off now, 16 said before flying away with 17 under his arms. 18 was dumbfounded but didn't waste time, and quickly followed the other 2. Broly was waving behind them as if he was seeing off a friend. After they couldn't be seen anymore, he stopped before a ferocious grin appeared on his face. So, they want to cooperate with them too. Now my expectations are increasing even more, don't disappoint me. He went back to his arena before his voice echoed through the whole world, letting everyone know of its location. Chapter 129. Expanding Senses. Taro fried a big meat drumstick with his key and was just about to bite into it, but before he could, it was snatched out of his hands. He was about to complain but saw how Broly already began to eat. That was mine. Taro mumbled. Did you say something? Broly growled while eating. Nope. Broly, won't we go back to the lookout? Ace asked. He was sitting on the ground, leaning against a small boulder. He looked in the direction the androids just flew to. No, it doesn't matter anymore. I didn't think that they would cooperate with each other, especially Cell, but it seems our appearance made a greater impact than I initially thought. You can go explore this planet or train, whatever you want, but you will be here in 13 days, otherwise there will be consequences. Broly shot a glance at Taro, who had his mouth full of food. He forcibly gulped it down at once. Of course, you can count on me. Broly only sighed, before he looked back at Ace. Make sure he is here. Understood. Broly nodded at the response. He then flew to the middle of the arena. He sat down cross-legged and started meditating. His body slowly raised itself into the air. While he was levitating, electricity started appearing all over his body. He circulated his energy, refining his control and generating more ki. He didn't only increase his ki. In the meantime, he used image training to further his control of his other energies. But this wasn't enough to occupy him. With the increasing strength of his mental energy, he was able to multitask on more things without getting mentally exhausted. Because of that, he used the time to train his senses. As of now, he always had to actively use his vision of truth if he wanted to see something well hidden. He wanted that the periphery was constantly, consciously or unconsciously completely revealed to him. So, he expanded his senses across the ground. It grew rapidly, covering more and more ground. Surprisingly, his senses didn't seem to have a limit to expand if he used more focus on it. Because he was currently cultivating his other energies, he didn't think the area he covered would grow this tremendously. In a span of a few days, his senses covered the whole planet's surface, which was currently his limit, but he could feel that with more time he would get better in distinguishing the different signals he was receiving. He was able to see every living creature, rocks, plants, oceans, even air itself was perceived by him. He saw how Taro had robbed yet another restaurant, while Ace was looking at some weapons in a shop nearby. Cell was meditating on an island while waiting for the Z-Fighters. He saw Chi-Chi with a worried face, Bulma working on some device, and Rashi reading dirty magazines. Thieves, gangs, scientists, politicians, athletes, martial artists. Many Earthlings had dismissed his message, seemingly thinking it was only a bad prank, but the authorities had taken it more seriously because of the city Cell had destroyed. They began to mobilize their army. Hercule Satan was being informed to take actions as well. All the information was almost overloading his brain as it was practically bombarding him. Every normal person would have already turned into a retard. Even the Z-Fighters who had trained their mental energy through image training would not be able to handle it. Ambition took over, and he wanted to go even further beyond. He wanted to know how far he could go with this. He stopped circulating his energies and wholly focused on expanding his senses. His body had already landed on the ground because all his energies were dormant. He was so focused on expanding that the time seems to shoot past him. He didn't even notice how his former rich but also crude mental energy was being refined with every second. He wanted to go further. The surface wasn't enough anymore. He wanted to expand it not only into the ground but into the sky as well, until nothing could enter or leave the atmosphere of this planet without him noticing. In the meantime, the androids arrived on the lookout. The Z-Fighters observed them calmly. The human fighters were still a little bit tense, but the now Super Namekian, Piccolo and Goku had given them more than enough confidence to engage them if needed. Piccolo and Goku were scrutinizing them, while the androids did the same, especially 16, who focused intently on Goku. 18 stabbed his sides with her elbow. Afterwards, okay? 16 looked at her. He closed his eyes contemplating about something. In the end, he did not take any actions, which surprised 17 and 18. Although they had asked him not to take action, he was after all different than they were. He was, unlike them, a real android. They were humans with enhancement, cyborgs. They could ignore the instructions given to them, but 16 wasn't supposed to be capable of that. I know what to do. Otherwise the whole planet and all its inhabitants will die. This was his answer. Was his desire to protect nature able to overshadow his program, or was something else the cause? So, what are you here for? Piccolo asked as he approached them with crossed arms. We want to help against the followers of this Broly guy. 17 stepped forwards.
Fine.
Now we don't have to search for you. In the next 2 weeks we will train and make a plan on how to beat them. Train? How will training for 2 weeks help? 17 asked doubtfully. Before we answer that, can you even improve through training? Piccolo observed them of any possible lies. Yes, we aren't robots. We are humans with some enhancement, so of course we can get stronger if we wanted to. If that is the case, we have a room called Hyperbolic Time Chamber, where 1 year inside equals 1 day outside. The androids were shocked by this revelation. Why are you telling them? What if they are still planning to kill us? Yamcha shouted out, but was quickly quieted by Piccolo's glare. They will go inside the room as well. We need them to be even stronger than they are now. Don't worry, they aren't the only ones who can improve. Piccolo showed a confident smile.
Yeah, no worries.
After I achieve the new form, I can beat them up with 1 arm. Goku added with a grin. You know we are right here. 18 mumbled. Either way, we have to wait for Vegeta and Trunks to come out, Then we initiate our plan with Cell. Cell, who is that? Another one of Dr. Gero's invention? Piccolo explained everything about Cell and Cell's intention to absorb them. You are not planning on handing us over to that monster, are you? 17 took on a stance, ready to engage at any moment. Hey, we are the good guys. Yamcha shouted out. 17 side glanced at him but focused back on Piccolo. Evidently Yamcha wasn't worth listening to. We have 2 other models that are based on you. We will get them as soon as Trunks comes out of the hyperbolic time chamber. 17 squinted after hearing this. He comes out tomorrow, right? If that's the case, we just come back in a few days. If we enter that time room or whatever, it doesn't really matter if we only come in a week, right? So, until you're done, we are going out and have some fun. 17 answered. Evidently, he spoke for 18 and 16 as well, since they didn't refute anything he said. Krillin wanted to say something, but they left as quickly as they arrived. Although the 2 groups allied themselves, they were still doubtful of each other. It was best for them to separate for now. A day passed slowly for the Z-Fighters, as they were still tense from the overall situation. They noticed that 2 figures slowly stepped outside of the temple. It was Vegeta and Trunks. Vegeta had regained his arrogant expression after being beaten by a woman. He had lost a lot of confidence. After all, he had finally achieved to become a Super Saiyan, only to be beaten by the second fight he had. Now, however, he had regained his pride and was confident in beating the androids. Trunks came out with a solemn face. He still gave off a serious aura like before, maybe even more so, but what was clearly different was the confidence he was exuding. Chapter 130. Vegeta is mad. Thanks for waiting, guys. Did we miss anything? Trunks asked while walking outside. It is good to have you back. Things have gotten much worse since you've been gone. Goku greeted Trunks. Trunks went on how they could have come out earlier, but Vegeta didn't want to until he perfected his form. Quiet. You have said enough. Our training is not to be discussed, ever. Vegeta interrupted Trunks. So, you have gotten stronger. Goku smirked as he looked at Vegeta. HM. Maybe. I will take care of everything now. There is no need to attempt training, Kakarot, because I am sure you wouldn't even survive it. Besides, I can guarantee that I won't need your help to take care of the androids. You fool. Tien shouted, but was quickly interrupted by Piccolo. I don't know how much stronger you have become, Vegeta, but the androids are no longer threats to us. What? Vegeta was shocked because he was sure that no one besides him would be able to handle them. Were they already destroyed? Trunks was equally shocked to hear that those monstrous androids were no threat anymore, which could only mean that they were destroyed or became good. But would those androids really change sides?
No.
Another threat has come back. Broly has come back with 2 followers. Broly, that wannabe legendary Super Saiyan? Vegeta shouted out with a bit of unrest in his eyes. He could clearly remember how Goku and Trunks were easily pummeled by Broly's group. He said that in 13 days, we had a chance to beat one of his followers. If we succeed, he would hold his promise of only attacking in 7 years. If we fail, he would kill everyone and destroy Earth. Vegeta and Trunks still had shocked expression on their face. Vegeta's face, however, quickly distorted into one of anger as he gritted his teeth. So, if we defeat one of his henchmen, he would give us amnesty? What a joke. I am the Prince of Dash. Vegeta's words were stuck in his throat as he looked at the 2 figures that were approaching. Raditz, you are still alive? How? Dash, Vegeta said with disbelief. It is a bit complicated, but basically I was revived by Broly through the Dragon Balls. Vegeta's eyes constricted as he let his eyes wander to the woman beside Raditz. He could tell that she shared some resemblance with Goku and Raditz. Jin, of course, noticed his gaze. I am the mother of these 2. I had some influence in the Saiyan community until I fled from Broly's reign. His reign? Wait, do you mean? Vegeta's thoughts were in tumult with the information he was getting. Yes, he was declared the new king of the Saiyan race. Our numbers are just in the hundreds, but many of them have accepted his reign. This, traitors all of you. There is only me left with royal blood. No one else has rights to the throne. Vegeta was almost losing it as he started panting. Saiyans only respect the strong. The only one who can reign now must defeat him. You shut your mouth, you insolent dash. Vegeta started cursing. He was on the edge after hearing that he was abandoned by his race. Be careful of what you say. Raditz cut into his speech. Vegeta was already boiling in rage.
Fine.
I will show you who the real heir to the throne is. Vegeta shot into the air and was about to look for Broly, but he was quickly blocked by Goku and Piccolo. You can't. We can't risk for Broly to cut our time even further. You. Out of my way, or you will regret it. Piccolo and Goku stayed silent, but showed no intention of moving away. Have it your way. Vegeta's hair immediately changed into a golden color, but his ki didn't seem to stop as it kept increasing. The flame-like ki grew in size and kept bursting out. His muscles expanded and his power became overwhelmingly stronger than before. With a golden light burst, a shockwave pushed everything near him outwards. Shortly after, the light dimmed again until it revealed Vegeta, who had reached Super Saiyan 2nd grade. Vegeta smirked. He saw the slight frown on Piccolo's face, but as he watched Goku and how calm he was, he looked like what Vegeta had achieved was nothing spectacular. This infuriated him even more. Humph. You will see, you are no match for me anymore. He directly dashed towards Goku, intending to attack him, but before he could, Goku screamed out and pushed Vegeta away with a ki burst as Goku turned Super Saiyan. Goku kept shouting as he pulled out even more energy. Like a storm raging, his energy changed the flow of the clouds as his power kept increasing, easily overshadowing what Vegeta just showed. The shock for Vegeta was imaginable. After all the training, after thinking he had once again surpassed Goku, he was being overtook again. Vegeta, to forcefully raise your ki will only get you to your level, but to reach the next step, you need to master Super Saiyan completely. You have to make Super Saiyan a natural state. Vegeta's eyes widened, but after hearing what Goku said, he gritted his teeth. Stop talking and show me your strength. He didn't say anything unnecessary anymore and directly dashed at Goku, who didn't move at all. For the spectators, Vegeta instantly arrived in front of Goku and released a barrage of attacks, but Goku easily evaded them all with minimal movement. He stepped to the side, evading Vegeta's kick, and directly punched him in the stomach, while grabbing Vegeta's leg. Because he was being held, his body stayed in place. He was pulled back to Goku, and without being able to resist, Goku started beating him up, easily breaking through any defenses Vegeta tried to put up. Goku karate chopped him onto the lookout again and calmly landed a few meters away. Vegeta slowly stood up again, visibly injured by the beating. Even I was easily beaten by Broly, and I didn't hold anything back. The only hope for us now is against his followers. Train another day in the hyperbolic time chamber, and we may be able to win. Tisage. Vegeta spitted out a mouthful of blood before transforming back to his base. He clenched his fist and then turned around and walked away. Trunks looked at Vegeta, who was contemplating about something, before turning back to Goku. I will go now and return in a few days. Trunks told them. Tien had explained everything to him while Vegeta and Goku were fighting. He was now filled in and knew what to do. You sure you don't need Goku to go with you? Tien asked. I am. They are no match for me anymore. I will bring them back, don't worry. It will take some time to refill the energy to travel. Since the androids won't bother us anymore after I have taken care of them, it will only take a few days until I am able to return. Alright, good luck then. The Z fighters wished him good luck as Trunks prepared his time machine. He traveled back to his time shortly afterwards. In the meantime, Goku and Gohan prepared to go inside the time chamber. Goku had a feeling that Gohan will be strong enough to make a difference after he had trained him. He had always felt that in Gohan slumbered tremendous potential, and now was the time to awaken it. Jain and Raditz would be the next after the two, then Piccolo, and afterwards the human fighters. By then Trunks should return already. If not, Vegeta would take another turn alone. They tried to make time for anyone to go inside at least twice with the exception of the androids, Cell included. 4 days have passed until Trunks had returned. The human fighters were still inside the room of spirit and time. Trunks had brought back 2 unconscious androids. Before they could wake up, Trunks and Piccolo headed towards the island Cell was supposed to wait on. It didn't take them long to arrive as they didn't have to hide their ki at all. They quickly spotted Cell, who was actually meditating, levitating above a rock. It was probably boredom or Broly's threat that made him train. Either way, it would be beneficial for the upcoming fight. Without saying anything, Trunks threw the 2 bodies unceremonial in front of Cell. Of course, their impression of Cell was a bad one as the first thing Cell did after hibernating was to eradicate a city. Not to mention with what method he had to deploy to get the time machine. Cell had noticed their arrival and grinned maliciously as he saw the 2 bodies, who were slowly waking up, lying in front of him. Without waiting any longer, he started gobbling up Future 17.